What's up, guys? Raziel here, and I just had to make this video. There is so much vitriol and disappointment just running through the entire gaming industry right now. And to be fair, much of it is deserved and well aimed, but of course it breeds negativity. I mean, I myself have made many videos giving my opinions on the current shitty state of the games industry and of course the MMO genre itself. But when something positive happens, I also have to talk about it. And what thing more positive than the 24-man raid Orbone Monastery, which was just released in the MMO Final Fantasy XIV. Now be forewarned, this video is going to contain many spoilers for those of you yet to do the raid in Final Fantasy XIV, which is what I consider to be the best MMO on the market right now, or for those who've never played Final Fantasy Tactics. The Final Fantasy that, in my opinion, is the best Final Fantasy game ever made. If you don't want spoilers, this would be the time to leave. So get the fuck out of here if you don't want spoilers. If you have seen it already or played it, or don't really care about spoilers, then let's talk about the 24-man raid Orbone Monastery and how it masterfully concludes one of the, if not the greatest, Final Fantasy story ever told.
I am Raziel.
Now, if you've been on my channel before, you'll know that I am an avid Final Fantasy Tactics fan. I first played Final Fantasy Tactics back when I was only 15 years old, and to this day, I have played through and completed the game at least 50 times. It's a timeless classic with a storyline that hits really close to home. However, there was always something that really bothered me about Final Fantasy Tactics. Its ending. Why? Well, nearly every character in Final Fantasy Tactics forced you to be emotionally invested in them. It was an amazing story, a trait that very few games could manage to do, especially in today's games market, which is flooded with shit games that focus on making a quick buck, via microtransactions and loot boxes and what have you. Video games today rarely see storyline, music, and characterization as an important feature. I mean, back in the days of the SNES and the PlayStation 1, however, it was all a company making RPGs had to rely on. And Final Fantasy Tactics and then Squaresoft accomplished this feat in spades. It's one of the main reasons that the Final Fantasy games are so popular and beloved even to this day. But I digress. Something always bothered me about the ending of Final Fantasy Tactics. I mean, Ramza, the main character, had finally defeated Ultima, and after the ensuing explosion, we were simply told that Ramza and his sister Alma were the only two that survived and threw aside their family name of Belov to go live silent and uneventful lives, until their dying day. As for the other characters that were with you at the end, they all just died, and Olin went on to write the story of Ramza and the Church of Glabados, revealing their lies until he was eventually caught and hung for blasphemy and, as a traitor. Delita, the other main protagonist and Ramza's best friend, went on to rule the kingdom of Ivalice, not paying much mind to the fact that Ramza was proclaimed dead and he never saw his friend again. I experienced that ending for the first time 20 years ago, and it always left a lot to be desired. Well, enter the Return to Ivalice raids in Final Fantasy XIV. Throughout this campaign, I was as giddy as a little fucking schoolgirl, revisiting the old locations and fighting the old bosses, like going to Leslia Castle, Gaug, fighting Argith and Hashmal, and of course now we have Orbone Monastery. But I had no idea what a treat I would be in for at the end of the campaign, that I had at first chalked down to nothing more than a fun throwback just for nostalgia's sake, and that no real insight would be given to the original game. You see, Final Fantasy Tactics was always presented as a narrative more so than a story taking place in real time. It's really one of the only Final Fantasy games presented this way, and you're more like being read a legend from an old book than anything else. The events had already happened, and you were simply reading about them. I mean, the main character that you interact with, Arazlam, in Final Fantasy XIV, is the character that tells the story of Final Fantasy Tactics and identifies himself as the man telling you the story right at the start of Final Fantasy Tactics. What we learn through Orbone Monastery and the cutscenes afterwards, however, reveals to us the ending of Final Fantasy Tactics was quite different, and Arslan had changed the ending in the original story to make it more of a happy ending. You see, what actually happened was that Ramza and all his companions, save for his sister Alma, sacrificed themselves and died to lock Ultima away because they knew that they didn't have the strength to actually defeat her. Ramza didn't have the echo from Hydaelyn, and so Ultima was still waiting for her perfect host to control, which didn't exist in that time. Who was the one she was waiting for? Me. Or should I say you? That's right. She was going to continue waiting for thousands of years for the Warrior of Light, the perfect host for her. Our main characters from Final Fantasy XIV, who are gifted with the echo, was who she was waiting for all these years. And it's just fucking amazing, and it blew my mind. I mean, also, upon learning of Ramza's sacrifice, his best friend Delita was brought to his knees. We saw him completely crumble in the cutscenes, completely devastated that Ramza would not be given the death or recognition he deserved for his sacrifice because the church was still in power, and he was a heretic. We also learned that Alma was pregnant with Olin's child, thus continuing the Bell of Endurai bloodlines and saving the bloodlines ultimately from extinction. After the Warrior of Light, our characters, defeat Ultima once and for all, Ramza and his companions appear and tell you that they are finally free to return to Hydaelyn and rest, now that their sacrifice has finally been given meaning. Ramza has at last been reunited with his best friend Delita, who still feels guilt about the recognition and praise Ramza deserved never being given. Ramza forgives him, and together they return to the Aether Stream as friends. Which really, touched me because throughout the story of Final Fantasy Tactics, Delita and Ramza's friendship deteriorates rapidly, with this kind of unspoken trust still between them, but they went down completely different paths. And this ending ties it all up, and thus, after 20 years, we as fans of the series got the ending that we deserved for this beloved story and its characters. And this is my main point in this video. Great and amazing stories that get you emotionally invested in them are still made in this cesspool of a gaming industry, and even more in a goddamn MMO no less. I mean, during my run of this raid, I was emotionally affected and excited to continue, and not because of any item that would drop or achievement I would get, but because I just wanted to be a part of it all. I was whooshed back to the 15-year-old kid I was 20 years ago, playing his original PlayStation with a bag of red vines and the contentment that I didn't have to go to school on a Saturday. I mean, isn't that what gaming is about? This is how you treat your fan base. It's about great storylines and characters and truly giving you an escape from your own troubles in your life. This video is my tribute to Square Enix and Final Fantasy XIV and Final Fantasy Tactics. I doubt anyone at the company will see this video, nor am I under the presumption that my opinion will ever be important enough to matter. But I mean it when I say this. Thank you, Square Enix. Thank you for creating this. Thank you for finally wrapping up an ending that has vexed me for 2 decades. I could not have been... It just couldn't have been executed more beautifully than you managed to do here. You have my thanks and you have my respect. This is why I have always been and remain a loyal fan of yours and to this franchise, and while I will continue to purchase your games as long as you stay true to who you truly are. And this is who they truly are, making great games. I mean, just look at what they did to Final Fantasy XIV in the first place, how they recovered it from disaster, and now they've added back in and tied up a storyline that they didn't even have to touch ever again, and pay respect to these characters in that story. A company that tells great stories while simultaneously including great gameplay and memorable music compositions is rare these days, guys. And Square is still doing it. So I'll say it again. Thank you.